Hey there, and welcome to a deep dive that might just turn your understanding of a pretty common medication on its head today.
Yeah, we're digging into some really interesting new research.
We're talking about metformin, and specifically how it affects pregnant women who have PCOS.
Absolutely, and get ready for some surprises.
Yeah.
Because this isn't your Metformin 101 kind of deep dive.
Definitely not.
We are going way beyond the basics here.
All right, so the study we're going to be looking at is called Immunomodulatory Effects of Metformin Treatment in Pregnant Women with PCOS, and it was just published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism. This month, September 2023. And this isn't just a small study either.
No.
We're talking data from 2 large randomized controlled trials, PregMet and PregMet2.
With a total of 615 women.
With PCOS.
With PCOS, yep.
Wow.
So that's a pretty
significant number. Yeah.
That's a really good sample size.
It is.
Yeah, good.
And it's important because having that large sample size just gives the findings so much more weight. They track these women throughout their pregnancies, comparing those taking metformin to those taking placebo. And what they found is really not what they were expecting at all.
Okay, so before we get to the findings, though, let's make sure that everyone listening is on the same page. A lot of people know metformin as a medication that's used for type 2 diabetes.
Right.
But it's also really frequently prescribed for PCOS, even for women who aren't diabetic.
Yes.
It helps regulate hormones and ovulation.
Yep.
And there's been this kind of idea floating around out there that it's also a powerful anti-inflammatory.
Right.
Right. And while those anti-inflammatory effects are very well documented in other contexts, this study that we're talking about today suggests that during pregnancy, metformin might actually be doing something much more interesting.
Okay, you've got me on the edge of my seat here. What did they find?
Well, they found that instead of simply like dampening down the immune system,
right,
metformin seemed to be activating it.
Okay.
In a very specific way. It's less like hitting the mute button on inflammation and more like giving the immune system a targeted workout.
An immune system workout. I love that analogy. So we're not talking about metformin making the immune system lazy.
Right.
More like helping it get in shape for the challenge of pregnancy.
Exactly. And that is just crucial because pregnancy,
especially with PCOS, demands a lot from a woman's body. Right.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
This workout isn't about ramping up every part of the immune system.
Right.
It's about fine-tuning it.
Okay.
Making it more responsive and effective.
Okay, so walk us through this. What does this immune mobilization actually look like on like a molecular level?
So the researchers measured a whole panel of molecules called cytokines in the women's blood throughout their pregnancies.
Now, for those who haven't brushed up on their immunology lately, cytokines are basically like the little messengers that are zipping between cells, coordinating the immune response.
That's a great way to put it. They act like a communication network for the immune system.
Yeah.
And what this study found was that metformin led to increased levels of several key cytokines throughout pregnancy.
So we've got metformin boosting these immune messengers. Which ones in particular caught the researchers' attention?
So 3 stood out.
Okay.
Eotaxin, FGFB, and IL-17.
Okay.
Each of these play a different but important role in the immune system. And seeing them all elevated suggests that metformin is orchestrating a pretty complex response.
All right, so let's break those down. What do we need to know about these cytokines, and why is it such a big deal that their levels are going up? Okay, eotaxin, FGFB, IL-17. It does sound a bit like a list of ingredients for a super-powered immune booster shot. What's so special about them?
Well, each of these cytokines kind of plays a distinct role in the immune orchestra. Take eotaxin, for example. It's like the conductor directing those immune cells to where they're needed most.
So it's about making sure the immune system is organized and responding quickly. I like it. What about the others?
Right, so with FGFB, think of it less about fighting off invaders and more about building strong foundations. You see, it's involved in the growth of blood vessels.
Okay.
Something that's absolutely crucial during pregnancy, both for the baby's development and for the placenta, which of course is the lifeline between mom and baby.
That makes sense. And it sounds especially important for women with PCOS, considering they can be at a higher risk for things like preeclampsia.
Exactly.
Which also involves blood vessel problems.
Exactly. Now, IL-17 is a bit of a wild card. It can actually promote inflammation in some cases, but it also helps regulate the immune response to infections.
Okay.
Making sure things don't spiral out of control.
So it's like having a really good defense attorney in the courtroom of your body, making sure the immune system's response is appropriate.
Yes.
not excessive.
That's a great analogy. And that's what's so fascinating about these findings. It's not just that metformin is boosting the immune system across the board. It's about fine-tuning the response in a way that's beneficial for both the mother and the developing baby.
It really does seem like metformin is saying, okay, team, we've got a big game coming up, so let's practice coordinating our defenses, boosting our support systems, and being prepared for whatever comes our way.
You got it. And this is where it gets really interesting because we know that women with PCOS have a higher risk of certain pregnancy complications, some of which might be linked to the immune system not functioning optimally.
Right. And this is where those potential implications for preterm birth come in, right? This immune boost that metformin seems to be providing. Could that be why we see it helping to prevent early deliveries in women with PCOS?
Yeah, it's a big
deal.
It is a big deal. And while this study wasn't specifically designed to prove a cause and effect relationship between metformin, the immune system, and preterm birth, the findings definitely hint at a connection there.
This is also fascinating, but before we get too carried away, you mentioned earlier that this study also looked at different BMI groups. What did they find there, and how does it connect to everything else we've been talking about? So different BMIs, different immune responses. What's the story there?
Yeah, so it turns out that metformin's immune boosting effect wasn't like evenly distributed across all the women in the study.
Interesting.
It seemed to have the strongest effect in women who were either at a normal weight or overweight.
Okay.
But for those who were classified as obese, the effects were less pronounced.
Okay, so BMI seems to play a role. Any ideas why that might be? Is it as simple as metformin just not working as well in women who are obese?
It's probably more nuanced than that.
Okay.
One theory is that the standard metformin dose, which is what they used in this study, might not be as effective in women with higher BMIs.
Interesting.
It could be a case of needing to adjust the dosage to get the same effect.
Interesting. So potentially more about personalization than a flat-out doesn't work situation.
Yeah.
What about the different types of PCOS? You mentioned that they looked into that as well, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, for those of you who might not be familiar, PCOS actually has different subtypes.
Right.
And it turns out these subtypes respond to metformin a bit differently.
Okay.
This study focused on two main types: hyperandrogenic PCOS, which is often considered the more classic presentation with higher levels of androgens like testosterone, and normoandrogenic PCOS, meaning their androgen levels were within a typical range.
Okay, so different types, different timelines. Tell me more. How did those effects differ between those two groups?
Well, they found that in women with hyperandrogenic PCOS, metformin's immune effects became more pronounced as their pregnancies progressed.
Okay.
However, for those with normoandrogenic PCOS, the most noticeable effects were actually seen earlier on, peaking around the middle of their pregnancy.
Wow, so it's almost like metformin is reading the room, so to speak, and adjusting its game plan based on each woman's unique physiology. That's incredible.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of personalized medicine and understanding that what works for one person might not work in the exact same way for another. We can't assume a one-size-fits-all approach, especially when it comes to something as complex as pregnancy.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. We've gone way beyond just thinking of metformin as a blood sugar regulator. It's clear that it has a much more intricate relationship with the immune system than we previously understood, especially during pregnancy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? If metformin can act as this immune coach during pregnancy, what could this mean for its use in other areas? Could we harness this immune modulating effect for other conditions where inflammation is a key player, like certain autoimmune diseases?
Right.
It really opens up a whole new world of possibilities for research and potential treatments.
It's like we've just peeked behind the curtain of a magic show. We thought we knew how the trip was done, but now we're seeing all these hidden mechanisms at play. It definitely makes you want to learn more.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of science. The more we discover, the more we realize we've yet to uncover.
Well said. A huge thank you to you and to our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of metformin and its unexpected effects. It's clear that this little pill has a lot more to teach us. Until next time, keep those brains engaged and be well.